Hi, everyone. Welcome. Giving a little bit different lecture today, mainly focused to our cybersecurity students who are studying networking and so forth. I'm not a technological expert in that topic, but they've come to study a little bit about binary notation, zeros and ones, and I have a little bit of a unique perspective on that. It's a very special time of year now between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so the name of the class is Binary Before the Beginning. I do want to go back to the beginning of the creation of the world and before that even, and show you how it's all connected. So let's get started. So I want to start by talking about other number bases. We sort of assume a base 10 number system. We think mostly in base 10. If I say, 15, so you think there's 5 units and 110. So 110 and 5 units is 15. And that's become intuitive to us. And of course, the metric system is great for that. It is a base 10 system. But if you think about feet and inches, if I say that he's 5'10", so I mean that he's 5 foot tall and 10 inches, which is really 5 times 12 is 60 inches and then another 10. So he's 70 inches tall, but we're representing 70 inches as 5'10". So that's a different number system, really a base 12 system, feet, because there's 12 inches in a foot. And, some people get overwhelmed by number systems, but I got to tell you, I got this page that I'm showing you now from an elementary school, syllabus. And I have great public school education. I want to thank my parents for that. And in 7th grade, I spent a lot of time studying different number systems because it's just sort of fun to play with and think about different systems. So here they're talking about a base 3 system. And so you can see, again, the first column is really always ones, but the next column is the 3s. And then the next is 3 to the second power, which is 9, and so forth. So, look, they said 1 in base 3, they have the number here. They say it's 15 and they show it as 120. And so just to walk you through that, what we look at the number is 120, but here it represents the number 15 because in the 9s columns, there's 1 9. And in the 3s columns, there's 2 3s. 2 times 3 is 6. So we have a 9 and a 6 is 15. And 0 in the 1s column. So that's the number 15. So just to get us acquainted with thinking in different number-based systems and not let it be scary to us, because even elementary school kids can do it. So I want to shift over now to binary, which is of course a base 2 number system. So you only have 0s and 1s, okay? Very limited, not a lot of characters. There's something called a hexadecimal system, which you're going to use in cybersecurity, where you need a lot of different symbols. But here, only 0s and 1s. And I want to jump a little bit to semiconductors. And again, I'm not a technologist, but I'm fascinated by technology. And I want to share with you something about the concept of semiconductors. When we speak about conductors, we're talking about things that are conductive to electricity. So there are things that are conductors, metals, copper wire is a great conductor. And there are things that are non-conductors or insulators like rubber or glass or wood. And so, if you send current through copper, it's going to go. And if you try to send current through rubber, it's not going to go. So it's an all or nothing type of thing. But what's great about semiconductors, and silicon is the main one we use today in industry, and it goes back to the 1830s and a guy named Faraday in the 1950s. And it's at the heart of all this great technology that we live with, our smartphones and our computers and everything. It's all based on semiconductors, which is, of course, it's still a huge and developing industry. And semiconductors means it's partially conducive to electricity, but partially not. And so that capacity that it'll sometimes go and sometimes not, there's a certain amount of resistance and a certain amount of conduction. So that gives us the capacity to send messages. Think of, Morse code, beep, 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 beep. So here we have on, off, conduction, insulation, conduction. It's semiconductors. So it's going or not going. And now that we have yes and no, we can actually send any message in the world, okay? And that's already sort of exciting and fascinating that with just 2 messages of yes or no, you can say anything you want. So it's, of course, this is related to machine languages. This is how machines themselves understand things. Machines don't really understand. They just process data. And so we've talked about 8 bits in a byte and so forth. And so talking about this, again, this base 2 system where there's only zeros and ones. So the first column is ones, the second column is 2 to the first power, and then 4s, 8s, 16s, 32s, 64s, 128s, and then 256s. And when we only have 8 of them, we're not going on to 256 or even 512 or 1024 and so on and so forth. I used to like to go as far as I could in doubling numbers. So in terms of networking and subnet masks and everything, and particularly the term called broadcasting. And broadcasting, I think of Tom Brokaw, this is the broadcast from NBC, whatever. But really broadcast is a technical term as opposed to unicast or multicast, where you are sending your message to a particular or to all or whatever. Broadcast means in this usage on a network, you have the yellow dot sending its message out to all the other nodes on the network. So that's why it's called a broadcast, because it's casting broadly, hence the term broadcast. So, so looking again at IP addresses and so forth. And again, I'm not going into all the stuff of IP addresses. It's a 4-digit series of numbers with values from 0 to 255. But why 255? And why is 255.255? Why is that the broadcast address? And why is 254 the last host address? And then I think we could understand, because again, look at these 8 bits, okay? And the first column, is 1, and the second is 2, and then 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and then 128. If you add up all those numbers, so you get 255. So when we put a 1 in all 8 places, here I could show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 4 is 7, plus 8 is 15, plus 16, and so on and so forth. And we add all these numbers, we get to 255. You can't get to 256. That would be the next digit here. If we had 9 places, okay, that would be the 256 columns. And it would be 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 would be 256. So this number is 255, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 in base 2. And that's why that's the highest number you can essentially get to here. And that's so it's the broadcast address you're sending to everybody. So from 1, the first host address, to 254, that's the last host address. That's a particular host. And if you do to 255, so you're broadcasting to everybody on the network. Okay, so far, a little bit about networking and binary. I want to tell you now, Advar Torah, how I see binary as a really important step in the creation of the world. So I have here a diagram, if you will. Excuse my audacity for making a diagram of the creation of the universe. It's a little bit abstract, but again, these are special days and it's something I actually think about a lot. So if you will, picture each one of these sections as a stage in creation. And so this first one, I'll describe it as Or Ein Sof, endless light, God's endless divine light. And, how could I portray it in any way whatsoever? So I left it sort of blank. That's Or Ein Sof, God endless light. And we know the Kabbalah teaches us a principle called Tzimtzum, which is a Kadosh Baruch Hu concealing himself, restricting himself, hiding himself. And the first thing, again, in the terminology of the Kabbalah, there's something called Kav B'Tzimtzum. And I'm using it here as zeros and ones, okay? So the very first sort of stage, once we're ending just Or Ein Sof, undifferentiated presence of God in everywhere and everything, and no possibility for the existence of any other existence. So nothing is created or could be, and we want to move forward into creation. So there's a constriction, and now there'll be presence or absence, okay, zeros and ones. And so binary is sort of the binary system is sort of the first logical step into presence and absence, if you will. And then going from there, I have here a Yud, which is of course 10. And so we're going into a base 10 system. You all know that there's 10 spheroids, whatever that means. You have a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the Olam was Nivra, Be'eser Ma'amarois. We know about Asaras Adibrois and so forth. So there's now a base 10 system. We went from a base 2 to a base 10 system. And here I'm depicting in the lower right, I have a Yud, I have another Yud, and I have a Vav in between them. And I'd like to explain something interesting here. The letter Yud can be thought of as a single dot, okay? There are places like in a letter where you just have, in the letter Hey, you have like a Dalet, and then you could have a Yud down here. And if that Yud is a single dot, it's actually kosher in the mezuzah or Sefer Torah or whatever. So Yud can be depicted as a single dot. So that's important. We're going to get to an Aleph at the very beginning of the Torah, and the top part of the Aleph is a Yud. So that's this Yud that I've depicted, and think of it as a single dot. And so from the single dot, there's going to come a line, and a line is then going to develop into a plane. And so we're talking again about the expansion from no dimensions into a single dimension, double and three-dimensional world that we live in, and so on and so forth. But getting back to the word Yud is like the word Yad, okay? And of course, the Yad has on it, I mean, there are 14 knuckles, which is Yud Dalids, that's 14. But what I want to talk about is the Yud as a unity, the Yad, and I want to give two different messages with the Yud, okay? I'm back to binary, okay? And so the Yud on the one hand has the gematria, it's equivalent to the number value of 10. But we could sort of consolidate it, the Yud, and think of it as, what am I doing? I'm giving you, I'm handing you something, okay? With my Yad, I'm giving, or I could do this, which I'm saying stop, okay? It's a stop sign. And the Hebrew word for this might be die, okay? Which is, of course, Yad, backwards. Yad is Yud Dalid, and die is Dalid Yud. So with my hand, I can give, or I can say stop. In other words, in binary, it's a 1 or it's a 0. On, off, okay? And Kabbalistically, the giving is the act of chesed, the sphere of chesed, okay? L'cha Hashem hagedula. And the stop, the die, the midat hadin, die is miloshen din is miloshen die, is midat hagvura, strength, turning oneself off, placing boundaries. And if we personalize it, one is the persona of Avram Avinu. Abraham is giving, he's running to share food with other people. And die, the midas hadin, is Yitzchak, and his hands are tied behind his back because he's a korban, he's an offering to God. So in this lower right corner where we have a right side up Yud, and that's the giving hand, and we have the upside down Yud or Yad, and that's the Midas Hagvura, that's the Yitzchak hand saying stop, turning it off. And in the middle we have the Vav, which is a Vav in Hebrew is a hook. And here it's acting as a balance beam between giving and stopping. If you just give, okay, that's called a mabul. That is destructive, overwhelming of bounty. And so the world becomes a flood. And if you turn everything off, so, I mean, you'll have a black hole or less, you'll have a world that's impossible to get anything started. That, Chazal say that, Rashi brings, Allah b'machshava livro b'midas hadin v'ra she'enu miskayim shitafim o harachamim. God considered creating the world with midat hadin, with the divine attribute of justice, but he saw that it wouldn't exist. You got to give some slack. And so he put the two together, and that is the formation here of the Yud, the Vav, and the Yud, which of course have a gematria of 26, God's name, the Yud K Vav K, which also has give and take, a balance of on and off. And so now with the Yud Vav Yud, we are in the middle center here. We're at an Aleph. And I just want to share with you, I have a big thing. I claim that I sort of live at the invisible Aleph. And I want to share with you where you can find the invisible Aleph. It's right before the base of Bereshis. Okay, the base of Bereshis, the first letter of the Torah, of course, is a base. And it's not a regular base, it's a base Rabasi. It's a great big base. And of course, the word base is bias, means a house. So we're talking about the large housing of the universe. Okay, this is where God put everything in his big house. And on top of this base, there's actually two pointers. You can see one of them in this picture. The base is sort of pointing up. On the roof, there's an arrow pointing up. And actually in the Torah, the way it's written, there's one pointing back. So there's one pointing up and there's one pointing back. And there's a Gemara in Chagiga, Yerushalmi, that says the one pointing up is when you look at the universe and you say, hey, where'd you come from? Who created you? So he points up at the one above. And then they say, well, what's his name? And he points back and says, oh, that's Aleph. Aleph is his name. So Aleph is symbolic of God's invisible presence. Aleph makes no sound, right? In English, it like corresponds to the A and the alpha, but those have sound. Ah, but Aleph has no sound. It's there, but you can't hear it. Like God, he's here, but you can't see him. And so the Aleph is really special. It's comprised here of Yud, Vav, and Yud. We talked about that, of giving and stopping, turning on, turning off, and the balance in between them of knowing when yes and when not, which is da'at, okay? Putting everything together, knowing when to say yes and when to say no, that's really important. And after that invisible Aleph, which is really behind the base of the first letter of the Torah of Bereshis, now we have the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth. Bereshis bara Elohim es hashamayim es haaretz. God created the heavens and the earth and everything else. And all the rest is history, as they say. So we talked today about binary and how that was a really key component. And today we have binary in our lives, right? Computers, and that shows sort of how computers are a reflection of the mind of the divine. And the fact that man has today captured the capacity to communicate in binary and program computers in binary, it's made us much more godlike, okay? With Tselem Elokim, we're able to do wonderful and really wondrous things with computers. And that's all part of God's plan. So we're using our yuds and our yads, our zeros and our ones we should do chesed, we should use midas chesed, we should also know how to use midas hadin and midas hagur, and when to say no. Ezu gibor hakovish es yitzro, putting boundaries on ourselves. And with that, we should be zoiche to gmar ksim et toiva, bracha v'atzlacha. Thanks for being here. Kol tuv.